You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe White.
Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. In this episode, we're going to cover the budget hearing from the county executive from Monday, March 10th. In the studio to do that is Dr. Joe Venosa, Mr. Mike Goldberg. Thanks for coming out.
It's another wonderful day in Wycomico.
Actually, the weather's getting a little better. I'm excited. Have softball practice tonight, so
I'm just waiting for the crabs to start
Better
growing.
you than I.
yeah, softball and crabs. I'm down there. So the county executive, we're always going for transparency, and give her a lot of credit. It was a nice presentation she had Monday. I don't agree with everything.
There were some nice pictures.
It was thorough, but I think we should delve into some of the specifics of that meeting. She offered 4 options that would solve, in some way or form, the budget crisis that we're coming up to with the state, and addressing, whether good or bad, funding the Board of Education, right? Mm-hmm. So, really, when it comes down to getting the information out there, she has to rely on her staff, and one of those people is the Director of Finance, Pam Oland. Mm-hmm. We've talked about it many times. We don't have audit from fiscal year 24. Mm. We're trying to plan fiscal year 26, which starts for us July 1st. Joe, I want to get a sense, what were you hoping to get out of this meeting, and did you get the information that you wanted?
No. I don't think anybody who was legitimately looking at the issue actually got what they wanted, because we didn't really get the numbers. What we got was basically a narrative that says these are the 4 menu options you can have, and only these 4 that I've selected and I've framed in this way. And there were a lot of what we call in academia false binaries. It's a fancy term for basically, a choice between basically 2 things, but it's not really accurate. Mm-hmm. And so I came away with it with more concern, obviously more distrust about what's going on in the executive's office regarding the finances, and also concerns about how the most important issue, which I think in our county is public education, because it's tied to everything else, how that issue is now being used as a wedge political issue for the 2026 election, because as I viewed it, that's what that whole meeting was about.
So, Mike, if someone gave you a presentation and made you decide between public safety and education, do you feel like you're in a rock and a hard place?
Well, you are. Obviously you have to have both. And, personally, I've got mixed feelings about it on the education side. I'm not an educator as Dr. Joe is.
But I want to get your perspective as someone who is a county resident on a fixed income. Where does it stand with you when you really have to decide between funding education, funding public safety, which would go directly to facing you, but also putting you on a personal level in a predicament where you're not able to afford maybe medications or food? I'm not saying that you're getting ready to go hungry or anything, but
we have to make some choices there, obviously.
When I look at what Jamie Dykes and Mike Lewis are up against with the state laws that have come out as far as how they can do their jobs, I'm very thankful that they're there to do them, and I'm really glad I'm not the one that has to do it. So I wouldn't want to defund the police or
of course not.
The state's attorney's office just to fund education.
Which hasn't really happened either. I think that this goes back to the problem of when it's presented that way.
Yes.
So saying defunding, I don't think is the appropriate term. It'd be flat funding or
defunding is what she put in her presentation. I didn't put that there. I thought that was weird terminology.
And it was done intentionally.
Well, that's the point. And again, people need to understand this. For as much as the budget was the subject of the discussion, I would say at least 85% of that event was a political grandstanding move for the 2026 election. And you could tell by who spoke and who came and how it was framed. So I think.
But she said that she wasn't really, this was not, political. It was not about, the election.
Again, I know a lot of therapists. I'm married to one, and the joke about projection obviously is that they project.
Yeah.
And any politician who's going to get up there and say, "Well, I'm not here to make I'm here to make the right decisions, not the politically popular ones." I mean, look,
Means you're there to make the
it
politically.
literally means that.
Puts me in a terrible predicament. Look, I mean, we got elections coming up. I am not going to make a decision because it's popular and it's going to get me reelected. I'm going to make the decision that I feel is best for Wacomico County, or what we feel is best for Wacomico County. So maybe it is time to look at the revenue cap, and is it the best policy? Is it the best thing? And
But there are a couple points that I think really can rub right down to the taxpayers, nub. The thought that we would override the revenue cap to fund education not just affects people's homes. The tax they're going to pay on those homes, and she did go through all the math there, and it didn't seem like it was that bad. But if you raise property taxes on the local businesses, say the grocery store, okay, so we're all struggling a little bit to keep the grocery bill in the range either that we want or that we can afford. You're talking about raising property tax rates on the grocery store. They're not going to just pay this tax and just be like, well, less money for us.
Gets passed through to the consumer.
Yeah.
Ultimately, only people pay taxes.
Yes.
that is one of the biggest points of the revenue cap. It put $9 million in our county residents' pockets.
When a corporation pays taxes, whether they're property taxes or income taxes, those taxes are built into the costs of the goods or services that they sell, and ultimately it comes out of a human being's pocket. And this is the real fallacy of our tax structure.
Well, and so I think breaking the revenue cap or overriding the revenue cap is one of the most business unfriendly things we could do. I've been a small business owner, multiple facets, multiple states. If you want to slow down my hiring, slow down my ability to grow, and if you're not as a business growing, then you're actually going out of business.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Well, again, I tend to disagree in principle. I'm not saying it doesn't necessarily happen, but I think, and you heard this at the meeting the other day, there were business people there, including, people from the Chamber of Commerce, again, which represents some of the businesses. The argument is that you're also investing in things that down the line are an economic investment.
In my business, if I needed to invest in something, and investing in young people in this county is worthy, okay, I would agree there.
Yeah.
But if I needed to buy a new stove, I also wouldn't also buy a new water pump. But you know what? If my water pump went out, I'd have to replace the water pump because I can't do anything else without a water pump.
Yeah.
So if I can't even get water to my business, then it doesn't matter that I have a new stove. So before we decide that we're going to break the revenue cap, we have to have those tough discussions where we're really prioritizing.
Well, I don't think we disagree on that.
Yeah.
I think actually, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think this goes back to the point that, one of the problems with that whole dog and pony show on Monday was that we don't even have, again, the financial information from last year's audit. So do we really know if option 2 of overriding the revenue cap, is that actually?
No, and you can't verify it. There was certainly no supporting documentation, and this is something I've found to happen very frequently with this executive branch of government, that they throw numbers out there, but if you don't have the supporting documentation, it's nothing but paper.
It's conjecture.
It is, and in many cases, perhaps even misleading.
So while we might disagree on the philosophical view about is it a good or bad thing to override the revenue cap, realistically, that might not even be the issue at play here.
If truly the executive's goals were education, they're only now when it's more politically got more
Politically expedient.
collateral.
Well, what did George Carlin say? He goes, politicians tend to hide behind 3 things: the flag, the Bible, and children.
Yeah.
And I think you could make the argument that it is an insincere position she's taking right now, because that it is just built around electioneering, I would say.
I want to bring Bob Taylor in, and I want to talk more about the nuts and bolts of these proposals, and also what other factors, the math. How do you get to these numbers rather than rely on the presentation? And then I'd like for us to get back together and talk really about where the public perception is right now, how the county executive is using polling and public social media, public approval to maybe to push the narrative. So will you guys stick around?
Absolutely.
I must.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. In this segment, we want to take some time to really delve into the details of the budget hearing that the county executive just hosted this past week and really give you some insight into how some of the figures, some of the facts that came out. To do that, we're going to have a couple guests in the studio. Dr. Joe Venosa, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Mr. Bob Taylor, the former county council attorney, Wacomico County, thanks for coming out.
Happy spring.
Starting to feel like it a little bit. So, gentlemen, this past Monday, the county executive hosted the budget hearing, and she did have a nice presentation, and along with Pam Olin, the finance director, to really talk about the implications of the budget. I want to get a little bit of perspective from you, Bob. I mean, let's talk about just the size, the scope of the school system, and how this is going to implicate this budget.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that the school system is much larger than the county government itself. And by that I mean, I think there are 25 buildings that the Board of Ed operates. It's over 2 million square feet. Just comparing that to the county, I would guesstimate that the county's buildings, including the state's attorney's office, government office building, jail, sheriff's office, etc., might total maybe 200,000, 250 tops.
That must be a heck of an electric bill.
And well, their electric bill is this is for the board now, is programmed to go up 1.2 million this year, just electric on those buildings.
I think we're all feeling that pain right now, aren't we?
As far as the employees are concerned, my guess is the Board of Ed, I didn't have a chance to check these numbers, probably at least twice as many employees as the county, possibly up to 3 times as many. So what they have is a much larger operation, and it's funded largely by the state. The state over the years has provided about 80% of the board's budget, the county about 20%. And that's also projected for this coming year, and that's the case this year as well. So that's, I think, something people have to kind of recognize.
The state does fund most of the education for Wacomico County.
Right.
And you saw some of the charts that were coming out. Mm-hmm. It made it look like per pupil in Wacomico County, there was almost no money spent. I think we all agree that the Board of Education needs more money. Mm-hmm. Bob just talked about how there's more students in the schools.
Mm-hmm. And I think when you break it down a little further into sort of what the actual resource allocation per student is, that's where the
rubber meets the road.
That's
right?
where the rubber meets the road because the superintendent has spoken about this many times, but one of the things that's sort of missed in just the numbers discussion is the fact that the physical issues in the classrooms, more students, less teachers, less aides, more needs, is really coming to a head in a way that we've never really wanted to confront in the county.
Let me just add a moment to that. We're right now at the highest enrollment in the school system ever.
Right.
It's 15,000 and a half, roughly 15,500.
Yep. Yeah. And in the context of that, that includes English language learners, special ed.
Student enrollment dropped during COVID.
Right.
But now that's kind of coming back up. People are coming back to the public school system. I think in some cases they're forced to do it because of inflation for monetary reasons. And we're also having an influx of immigrant population. So there's several drivers of that.
Dr. Micah Stauffer spoke at the budget hearing Monday.
The challenges we face with local funding were not created by our county, current county leadership. If our schools had been funded above the minimum in years past, as they have been these last 2 years, I firmly believe that we would not be in the position that we are today. We need to improve local funding to reduce overcrowded classrooms, to ensure students get the attention they need, to enhance school safety and create better learning environment. A long-term formula-based approach has been presented to you and we stand behind it. This proposal is simple: maintenance of effort plus inflation from the previous year plus a 2% investment to continue improving our schools each year.
The county last year funded $1 million over maintenance of effort. That has to cover the inflationary cost as well.
Right. To put it in context, the board initially requested $8 million.
Yeah. Let's talk about the county's like the budget outlook for fiscal year 26. I mean, you've written here that the total funding increase is about 8.5% from the state. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
the total ask for the Board of Ed right now, and it's just an estimated budget, because they don't know what's going to happen in Annapolis either, just like the county. Everybody's waiting to see what's going to happen, and we know that there's a whole lot of shaking going on.
I don't think Annapolis knows what's going to come out
Yeah,
of
so,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, and
But-
we're
but-
down to the wire.
Yeah, but anyway, based on their assumptions of what they're going to get from the state, they're asking overall for a total increase of about $22 million. Now, most of that, about 18 and change million, is from the state, and about 4.1 million would be from the county above this year's appropriation. Now, of that, about $1.5 million is what we call maintenance of effort.
Now, what does that mean?
Well,
what is
what
that?
maintenance of effort is, it's something that the state implemented about 40 years ago that requires each county to maintain the same per pupil spending as in the prior year. They can go above maintenance of effort, as we've done for a couple of years, and many counties do almost always. But they can't go below that, or they risk penalties, which includes losing some of their state funding.
Let's talk about one other aspect of this, because the Board of Education is actually front and center, but there are other departments. So in the county executive's presentation, she did address, and some of those department heads also spoke as well.
In Wycomico County, 2024 brought a threefold increase in murders over 2023. Those charged with murders in 2023 and 2024 are now pending trial. With the increase in violent crime, SAO resources, as our law enforcement resources, are spread more thin and more thin. Far too often, because the state legislature and the state administration have imposed limitations not designed with a view towards long-term health for our communities. Law enforcement and prosecutors and the public school system are left to pick up the pieces. We cannot do that with increased mandates without adequate resources and funding.
How does that factor? Because this doesn't happen in a vacuum. So how does the factor of trying to get the Board of Education the funding they need, the investment as you're calling it, also factor in with the other departments that also need increases in their budget too?
Well, I mean, I think the long and the short answer to that is we've now hit what you might call the tipping point. In other words, because of the property tax revenue cap, the tax money from real estate taxes has kind of flatlined. It's still going up. I shouldn't say flatlined, but it's a straight line. It's not increasing greatly. Our income tax revenue has actually done better and is now more than our property tax revenue, real estate property tax revenue.
And that's since like 2019, we show that
They crossed then,
graph.
yes.
Now,
Those are the two big sources.
Now, speaking of that increase, there's something I do want to address. In Pam Olin's presentation, she talked about the revenue tax cap giving us about $1.6 million in additional funds for fiscal year 26. But she glazed right over the fact that there, historically, the last couple of years have been about a 10% increase in our income tax receipts.
With the math problem that we only have $1.6 million increase from our second largest revenue source, and we need $7 million. But what this presentation seems to have left out is the $70 million that we have from income tax receipts and recordation taxes. So it's giving me the perception that we're only looking at using property taxes to solve our problem, and yet we have completely bypassed the income tax, which is larger than our property tax revenues. And I know that the income tax receipts, I believe, are supposed to be increasing this year as well, despite the economic conditions. So for the public's perception, I think it's important to let them know or make them aware of where that $70 million plays into the rest of the formula, including the Board of Education.
We still don't have the data from FY24, the year that ended 8 months ago now. We don't have that data.
And Joe, this is something that we've covered extensively on the show.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a dad, a school-age student, so am I. Mm-hmm. How frustrating must it be to talk about education funding, the need to possibly raise taxes? This is what the county executive proposed. Mm-hmm. and we don't know where we stood from almost 9 months ago now, right?
To say it's incredibly frustrating would be an understatement from my end.
Okay.
It boggles my mind that you would even entertain the idea of having a budget meeting for the county like the executive did without even being able to produce the audit from last year. It's shocking.
Start with a review of the most recent audit. We are still finalizing the audit. There is some accounting issues associated with some changing in presentation. So these are numbers that are unaudited.
Well, and I've talked to Bob about this, and you can't count on this, but historically there are some unused funds from the year before. They call it a budget surplus, but it doesn't mean, hey, congratulations, we all found money in our back pocket.
We're not producing more money necessarily.
It's just money that was allocated at some point that wasn't spent.
Mm-hmm.
Before we raise taxes, don't we have to cross this bridge?
Well, I think forget raising taxes. Just before we have a discussion about what the budget is going to look like, let's at least know where we're coming from.
Okay.
She knows that we've got a tax crunch this year. As I say, we've reached a tipping point. Mm-hmm. They have, I'm sure, estimated data on FY 2024. In fact, in one of her tables, tax revenue, she gives unaudited amounts for the income tax revenue and the real estate tax revenue for 24.
Talk about the fact that in that presentation, there were 4 options that were sort of presented to the public. But again, it's pretty clear that option 2 is the one that the executive intends to push forward with. And that's, of course, breaking the revenue cap for education.
Well, I call it override because breaking suggests something wrong or illegal. And actually, state law allows that to happen. And some counties do it. I'm not going to say many because it's not many.
Well, so Bob, explain what you mean when the county executive, and along with the county council, because they'd have to approve it, would override the revenue cap. It can only be done for education, right?
It can only be normally done for education. There's specific enabling law for that.
Okay.
And all the county exec has to do is propose that in her budget. And now, of course, the county council has to follow through and do it. That's why when I made my comment on Monday night directly to her, I said, look, you can do this, put the monkey on the council's back. I mean, both of them would have to do it. But she has to initiate it.
Right.
They can't add things to the budget. They can only work with what she puts up there. They can cut, but they can't add.
I think to Joe's point earlier, I mean, there was 4 options that were laid out. There's so many more variables and options that could be presented.
Sure.
Yes, I get the same sense as you that the county executive favors option 2, which would override the revenue cap for education, fully fund the Board of Education. It would be somewhat unpopular not to, but there's ramifications to that.
There are, and look, in full disclosure from my perspective, I probably would be inclined to support that in theory. I think one of the problems, though, that's going on right now, and we saw this at that meeting, is the current issue with the school funding budget and the county budget is now being conflated with the idea of the revenue cap. You know, we heard discussions from Mike Dunn and the lobbyists from the Greater Salisbury Committee there.
We put this blue ribbon panel together to bring thought leaders together in a good way to present a plan. Thank you for the opportunity to hear that plan. You're the first county executive who has talked about the elephant in the room. That all by itself deserves applause. Thank you for that. The elephant in the room, we have in our GSE 2030 plan, we address the revenue cap, and all we ask for is that a blue ribbon panel, just like the one that we've assembled to come and talk to you tonight, made up of community leaders, takes a look at that public policy that was implemented more than 20 years ago and simply ask the community, is this still appropriate public policy?
Talking about creating a blue ribbon commission. Okay, fine. That's not the place for that conversation. That's a different issue than what we're dealing with at this particular moment, because as other people said there, the revenue cap issue is not going to change until the next election anyway.
Well, technically, it would be almost 3 years from now.
Almost 3 years.
If we put it on the ballot in 2026, it would not have an effect until fiscal year 27.
That's like saying I'm planning to go to Norway in 2029. Like who cares? Right now we're talking about right now.
Yeah, we're trying to pay the electric bill right now.
And here's another aspect of it. I mean, killing the tax cap would be done for the purpose of increasing people's tax bills. I mean, and so if you're going to have an override of what it is now, it's the same thing.
I think
So, I
this is
mean,
the-
it's not going to be
yeah.
any better
It's
by
the-
killing the tax cap.
It's the hardest thing, I think, for voters out there to understand that it may not even be that your taxes don't still go up because your assessed value went up. It also might not mean that your property rate didn't go down, but maybe not by as much as it could have.
We're now subsidizing the airport and the Civic Center. We didn't do that until a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all of this is built in. And as I say, unfortunately, it's crunch time. This is why I've suggested that we implement a personal property transfer tax.
Okay, so how would that work?
Well, that would only apply when a deed is recorded.
Okay.
And it would be a certain percentage of the consideration, the sales price, essentially.
Do other
the
counties in
property.
the state have this?
Of our 24 counties, all except 5 do. And we're the
Who
only
would pay
county.
this? Who would pay the transfer
Well, it would
tax?
be paid when the property's sold.
But by the seller?
It can be
or-
negotiated. Can be
Okay.
negotiated. Most counties have it. The argument that you always get from developers and realtors is, "Oh, this will be terrible for our business. It'll hurt sales." Well, I mean, Dorchester County has it. Caroline County has it.
I don't think in this
Worcester
market
County
that's
has
it.
it.
Yeah.
You know, the only one that doesn't is Somerset.
So it's interesting if the business community or certain elements of the business community who are so gung ho about getting rid of the revenue cap, why don't we first try this transfer tax, see if they're willing to support that to put in the investment that many of them claim they support.
Joe, I am shocked that there's many folks in the business community who would favor getting rid of the revenue cap in Wycomico County. I think in some counties, we get compared to Worcester County, and I think they're apples and oranges. And I think, and I don't think you.
We do get compared a lot.
We
but
do.
Yeah.
The base rate of the assessed value of the property in Worcester County, we're not even on the same page, right?
yeah.
And this is why our funding from the state for Wycomico County schools is so much higher than Worcester County. The money the state gives
and
us
that's true
because they have a formula.
That's true of
for it.
every county. I mean, Worcester gets the least amount per pupil from the state.
Yeah.
Talbot's second. Talbot's the second richest county. She complained about these things that the state's doing. They're throwing at us, for example, a portion, or most of the teacher's pension plan funding, other things. That's statewide. That's not just this county. Every county has that problem. So we need to look at it in perspective, that everybody's facing the same situation.
Thanks for watching this segment of Open Agenda. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. And in this segment, we want to evaluate just a little bit about the public perception over the 4 options that the county executive proposed, and maybe some of the misinformation you might see out there, including some polling. In the studio with me, Mike Goldberg's rejoined us, and Dr. Joe Venosa. Thanks for coming back, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So, you know, the county executive at the hearing asked people who got up and spoke to tell her what they thought was their favorite option. And we've discussed already in the show that there's more than 4. There's actually an infinite amount, and it's going to take some level of compromise. Since that time, you know, Eastern Shore Undercover, who has an MOU with the county to disseminate information, has chosen to put up a poll that lists these 4 options. And Mike, I want to get a sense. I mean, how much value can you put into a poll that's made this way?
Well, I think it has absolutely no value at all. I mean, anybody who's taken statistical analysis 101 would understand that this is, it's just numbers being thrown out there. We have no idea if the numbers that are being presented in favor of options 1, 2, 3, or 4 have any validity at all, if they reflect the will of the people who have participated in the poll. But there's a few other pretty large problems with Eastern Shore Undercover. There's a lot of people who are residents of Wycomico County who are blocked.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm blocked, and I've never commented on his page ever in
Well,
my
it's
life.
because you're on open agenda, and he's heard you at the council meetings, and that's
I'm
that's
blocked
enough.
too. I thought it was from excessive handsomeness, though. So I don't know.
I'm certain
I
that's
don't,
it.
I don't know what your issue is.
That's definitely not my issue.
I'm not
I'd say
blocked because I don't have a Facebook account. I never have. I never will.
Okay.
I detest social media. The only social media I go on at all is Next Door Neighborhood. So, but there's a lot of people out there who are being excluded. This is particularly problematic because the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, that the county executive unilaterally executed with Eastern Shore Undercover makes that blog site a de facto public information office. There is an agency relationship that's been established by that MOU between Eastern Shore Undercover and the county government. So they only represent the county executive's interests. They're certainly not reflecting the desires or the opinions of the county council
or us. I mean,
anything else.
anybody else.
We're not putting up a poll. I mean, it's really we encourage people to go to the meetings and discuss it. Even the county executive's hearing. That's the forum. Joe, I want to ask you. I mean, how do you feel about people from outside the county voting on our unofficial poll?
Well, again, I mean, how do you think anyone should feel, right, when it's a county matter, right? I mean, are we going to ask people in Peru, like, what their thoughts are on the revenue cap is? Because according to what we have with Eastern Shore Undercover, that could happen. You know, here's the thing. This blog, you're absolutely right. This blogger has absolutely blocked people. This blogger has also, we know, created fake accounts. And this blogger, as we know, has more of a following outside of Wicomico County, which means, to your point, it's not just that there's a real argument that you could make that the MOU itself and what it means for the lack of citizen input is a problem, but it really means that nothing that the poll indicated can be trusted.
But here's the problem to me, that this is influencing public opinion.
Sure.
And is it proper for the government of the county to outsource the public opinion poll that does influence people to someone who is clearly a political operative for the county executive?
Well, I mean, look, I think influencing people politically is very American. It's what we do. It's what we're doing right now. But most of what we're about is the transparency and getting other folks to participate. I think the message should be that if you're getting your information from any blog site, not one particular one, but any, buyer beware. And if the only way you're making a decision about which way you feel about the Board of Education funding, in this instance, is you need to go get your own information. Go to primary source. If you go to the county's website, the phone number and the email for every county council person's there. And not just because they're in your district, the ones who aren't in your district, you should reach out to those folks, fill their ear. Look, I think at the end of the day, if the county council gets the sense that, look, people want to pay more in taxes, they want to invest in the school, they're okay with doing this, I think that they would let that flow through to their decision. But also at that meeting on Monday was a group of folks who are very invested themselves in the education system. It's okay and acceptable to know that they're going to favor the option too. You can't fault them for that.
No.
But then if on the website, on the blog site, it also favors that, again, buyer beware.
Well, and just to that point too, one of the things that concerns me most is that within a day or two, I guess at the county executive's behest, the blogger removed the poll.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know why.
Right, but okay, if it was such an important way of gauging public opinion, regardless of if you live in Wicomico County or,
Well, some citizens raised a stink about it on Wednesday, and the county executive claimed that she didn't really have anything to do with that poll. That the blogger had come to her. But in a video from the county executive's FaceTime Live, I think it's called, which I was shown, she said clearly that the county executive went to this blogger with whom she has a contract to be essentially the public information officer, to conduct this poll. Now, tell me, can you think of a single governmental entity that has a contract with a third party to disseminate information or to do polling? I mean, should the federal government sign a contract with CNN to be their official news agency?
This poll, at the very least, is in poor taste.
Yeah.
It's not representative of all the taxpayers in the county, because so many folks can't can't participate. But I think also the general public needs to understand that there is other information that's being disseminated in the same manner.
Yeah.
So you take everything you get from that source with a grain of salt.
And
Don't
if you-
take our word
no,
for it.
and
Go
that's
get
the
your
thing. I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And so one of the things that you have to ultimately realize is, as you said, there's a lot of information out there, and being able to understand that maybe the source you're looking for isn't going to be the most convenient, but you're looking for the most accurate.
you talk about this blogger, in this instance, being a campaign donor, and Joe alluded to it earlier. I mean, ambition of political ambition. You start monetizing these things, and it can get dangerous really quick. So,
But he continues to deny being a campaign donor, and all you have to do is go to the campaign finance website and look up the PAC for Friends of Julie Giordano. It's on there, plain as the nose on your face.
That's a big nose, I'll give you that.
well, remember, he was blocked because he was too good looking. So.
Exactly. No, the nose was too big.
Out. Well, thanks for watching this episode of Open Agenda. We'll be back with another new episode. We think Mark Carroll is the best editor ever.